Welcome to Storyflix. In this video, we will explain Last-Minute Romance. This movie tells a story of a girl suffering from stage 3 cancer trying to fulfill all her desires before her death picks her up. Will she manage to complete all of her dying wish lists? Or did she actually survive her illness? Let's find out in Last-Minute Romance. Last-Minute Romance begins by showing a young woman named Baxi, who is doing her job as a first responder at an emergency call center connected to the Han River Bridge. She works in the prevention division to help save people who are desperate or going through difficulties in their lives. Baxi is a young woman currently suffering from stage 3 brain cancer and has been diagnosed with a short lifespan. She chose to work as a first responder in the prevention division. She wants the last moments of her life to be useful for others so that she doesn't have any regrets in the future. In addition, Baxi intends to fulfill all the wishes she has made on her wish list that she will do before she dies. One of Baxi's biggest wishes is to meet a handsome and very popular male idol artist named Jae Woo. Baxi has a friend who is currently a monk at one of the temples in their city. Baxi's best friend suggests that Baxi does an audition to find a man whose face is similar to the idol artist. And the man who passes the audition will later get a reward of 3 million won if he wants to date her for 1 month with a style and behavior similar to her favorite actor. Hearing her best friend's brilliant idea, Baxi decides to agree and starts making announcements about the audition on social media. After the post about the audition was sent, many incoming messages appeared. Baxi and her best friend then meet each person who contacted them. Unfortunately, none of the participants had a similar face and style to Jae Woo. After a long audition, Baxi starts to look tired and decides to stop the audition. In the evening, Baxi's best friend, who cares deeply for his friend, prays to the Buddha so that Baxi can soon meet the person she is looking for and all her wish lists can come true. Elsewhere, a young man named Yoon Dong-jun is doing an acting audition for an extra role in a movie. Unfortunately, Dong-jun failed to get the role because his acting skills were still very shallow. After that, he went to all the cosmetic clinics to meet a plastic surgeon. Dong-jun then explained that his face is very similar to the face of a famous actor named Jae Woo and that it often makes Dong-jun misunderstood as an artist. Dong-jun is tired because many people think of him as someone else and accuse him of being the fake Jae Woo. That's why he wants to change his face so that he won't be compared to or misunderstood as someone else. Unfortunately, the plastic surgeon refused Dong-jun's request because plastic surgery without medical urgency violated the code of ethics. Moreover, Dong-jun's money is still not enough to pay for the plastic surgery needed to change his facial structure. Hearing the doctor's explanation, Dong-jun became desperate and frustrated and decided to leave the clinic. He feels tired because almost no one sees him as a Dong-jun, but as someone else. That night, Dong-jun walks alone on the Han River Bridge lamenting his fate. Seeing an emergency phone 119 hanging, he decides to make a call to that phone to vent all his annoyance and anger. Baxi was on duty as the first responder to the emergency phone and immediately asked about the complaint that the caller was currently experiencing. Dong-jun then told everything he had been through lately, from the mishaps at the acting audition to his frustration with his face resembling a famous person. After Baxi heard all the explanations from Dong-jun, she was very surprised because she didn't expect that there would actually be someone who looked like her favorite actor. She felt that this was a very rare coincidence. After that, Baxi immediately went to the Han Bridge and approached Dong-jun to confirm Dong-jun's words. After arriving at the bridge, Baxi, who saw that Dong-jun really resembled her idol actor, was very happy and immediately intended to offer him some money so that she would date him. Unfortunately, Dong-jun refused the offer because he didn't want to be compared to the actor. Before Dong-jun leaves, Baxi tries to convince him by giving him a security deposit and asking him to reconsider his decision. The following day, Dong-jun relaxed with his roommate, Hwang Jum-sun. Jum-sun is a webtoon artist whose works are still unpopular and have few readers. Dong-jun then tells him about the offer Baxi gave him last night. After realizing that the money offered is too high, Jum-sun tries to persuade Dong-jun to accept the offer. However, with that amount of money, Dong-jun can use it to do things he wants, like plastic surgery on his face. Hearing Jum-sun's words, Dong-jun realized that the offer was a pretty good deal. Dong-jun then calls Baxi to say that he has changed his mind and is willing to accept the offer. Hearing this, Baxi felt very happy and excited while looking at the poster photos of her idol artists. The next day, Dong-jun began to study the style of dress and speaking style of artist Jae Woo through videos broadcast on television. A few days later, Dong-jun finally meets Baxi on their first date. But unfortunately, Dong-jun's appearance, which is eccentric and exaggerated, is very different from Baxi's expectations. She looks surprised and disappointed to see Dong-jun, who still can't carry out his role well. She then tells him about the role that he should play. Baxi's alarm suddenly goes off during the date, which indicates for Baxi to take her medicine. She then explained to Dong-jun that she did all this because she was not old enough because of the stage 3 cancer she was suffering from. Hearing that, Dong-jun's expression turned a little serious. He then said he would try to do his best on their next date. After Dong-jun returned to his apartment, he told the story of his first date with Bak-si this afternoon. Hearing Dong-jun's very interesting story, Gum-seon started thinking about turning Dong-jun's story into a webtoon. He started writing the storyline and drawing webtoons based on the story from that day. However, in his webtoon this time, Jung-sun deliberately described Bak-si's figure as an ugly-looking woman who has an arrogant character and is a little crazy. Unexpectedly, after posting the first episode, many people were interested in Jung-sun's webtoon, and the webtoon became popular. Meanwhile, Dong-jun is now getting serious about his role as Jae-sul-woo. Dong-jun, who is secretly starting to care for Bak-si, feels he doesn't want to disappoint her. That night, Dong-jun and Bak-si meet again at a cafe for their date. While drinking beer, they talked about their lives with each other late into the night. They began to spend more time together, and their relationship became closer from that night on. Dong-jun seems to be starting to have feelings for Bak-si, but he still hasn't confessed his feelings. One day, when Bak-si was about to meet Dong-jun for a date, she gets a message from her best friend containing a webtoon link. It turns out that the link is a link from a webtoon made by Jung-sun. After reading the entire webtoon episode, Bak-si looks very sad because the character depicting her in the webtoon is very bad and does not match reality. Bak-si is disappointed in Jung-sun, who has turned her life story into a webtoon without her permission and has made her character in the webtoon look pathetic. Therefore, Bak-si decided to terminate her contract agreement with Dong-jun, but she would still pay him the money according to their initial agreement. After that incident, Dong-jun immediately went to see Jung-sun and scolded him for hurting Bak-si's feelings. On the other hand, Bak-si's idol artist Jae-sul-woo is in trouble due to a dating scandal. It turns out that the media mistook Dong-jun's photo as a photo of Sol-woo because of the resemblance of their faces. Sol-woo and his manager plan to meet the girl in the photo, none other than Bak-si. Sol-woo comes to Bak-si's house the next day to meet her. At first, Bak-si thought that the person who came to her house that day was Dong-jun. But after some time, she finally realized that the person was the real Sol-woo. Without further ado, Jae-sul-woo immediately asked Bak-si to give a clarifying statement in front of the media that the photo was actually just an edit. He then promised that his agency would pay her some money in return. After that, Sol-woo and Bak-si met with reporters to give an announcement clarifying the scandal that befell Sol-woo. In front of the media, Bak-si was forced to say that the photos were edited simply because she was a fan of Sol-woo and then apologized to reporters. However, she said all that so that there would be no misunderstanding from the media about the relationship between Bak-si and Sol-woo. At the same time, Dong-jun is seen running to Bak-si's house to apologize to Bak-si and confess his feelings for her. After arriving at Bak-si's house, Dong-jun finds Bak-si with Sol-woo in front of the reporters. When one of the reporters proved that the photo was not edited, the panicked Jae-sul-woo deliberately lied by saying that all the photos were actually just about him doing good to one of his fans who was sick with cancer. Sol-woo even says he will pay for all of Bak-si's hospital bills and explains that he hid it because he didn't want to announce his kindness in front of the media. Hearing all that, Bak-si couldn't help but say nothing because she didn't want to make things more complicated. But Dong-jun, who listened to Sol-woo's lies, felt very angry and annoyed. He then broke through the reporters and approached Bak-si. The reporters were surprised because they saw the resemblance of Dong-jun's face to Sol-woo's face. In front of the reporters, Dong-jun said that the person in the photo was him, meeting Bak-si at that time. He then explained that everything Sol-woo said was just a lie. After that, Dong-jun confessed his feelings to Bak-si and started kissing her in front of the reporters. From that day on, Bak-si and Dong-jun got back together and started living their lives as a couple. Unfortunately, sometime after that, Bak-si had to start undergoing treatment at the hospital due to her worsening health condition. She feels very grateful because, in her last moments, there was someone who would accept her and love her very much. On the other hand, Dong-jun, who is getting popular in the media, starts getting offers to be a commercial star or take on a role in a drama. Dong-jun has to accept that at the time of his film debut, Bak-si is no longer by his side. However, Dong-jun still loves Bak-si in his heart and promises to always remember her. He is relieved that people begin to recognize him as Dong-jun and not as Sol-woo anymore when he is out in public. The film closes with a scene where Dong-jun is smiling at the Han River Bridge, which is the place where he meets Bak-si for the first time. The moral that can be learned from this movie is reminds us a lot to appreciate every day we have because we will never know when death will come to pick us up. We have to be able to take advantage of every opportunity that exists to be with the people we love before it's too late.